Right. And last year, it was so much about the coaches learning the players. Not only that, they had to learn the players, set the standard, and then try to get these players to reach the standard while being a new staff, which is tough, right? You're trying to retain players with the new staff being in there. You're trying to learn the players. You're trying to see what you're going to have, see what talent you have, but also set a standard in there. And I think that's why in the beginning, they were talking about last year being more so it's on the coaches, and then next year it'll be on the players. And it seems like every coach and even the players are kind of echoing that sentiment when they talk. Um, you know, Tony White basically made it. He's basically of the belief, and the staff is of the belief, like you have to win every day, and each day we reset, and so you have to live up to it or you don't. And the people that live up to it, the majority of those days are going to be the people that lead. It isn't about whether you're junior, senior, freshman, sophomore, whatever. If you're going to come in and do the things they ask you, and you're going to live up to the standard that they're asking you, you're going to see the field. And so right now, like Tony White's talking about, they have the different teams set up and, on the different fields. And so right now they're still trying to learn because people are talking about like, who's going to get the cornerback 2 spot, who's going to play where. And they're not even close to that point yet, just because of the fact that Tony White is talking about how, everything's so spread out with these teams being all over the field that he's asking other coaches, like, are we even good defensively? And the reason he's asking that, of course, is because he doesn't see it all together just yet, and when he does see the one, sometimes he's talking about like the communication needing to be improved and stuff like that. But however, they did talk about the fact that the team's up to speed and doing things they were at the end of last year, meaning that it's night and day compared to where they started spring last year versus this year. The tackling, getting off of blocks. He said they went from the X's and O's to really just kind of the brand and style of football that they're trying to play here, and make sure everything is being done the same way. And that's kind of what I talked about before when the stat came out of Nebraska retaining 77% of their talent. That's it right there. It's everything is being done the same way. And every single coach on this staff, all of the players, when they speak, it's all the same kind of way that they're talking about. And what that does is that's going to make sure that everybody's on the same page. These guys are not, everything that these guys are being told is legitimate. And this retention and the way these guys play for each other and the way these guys play for the staff comes off of that. And I think that's the biggest thing that we're seeing this spring as compared to last spring is the relationship, not only that the coaches have with these players, but the relationship the players have with the players now. I think this is, the most I've in a little while that I've heard players talking about other players to the level they do and talking about them in the way that they do. And it's nice to see that we have a team of guys that trust the guys next to them, that trust the one of 11. Because in previous years, it didn't seem that way. There was always some standouts, and there was always some guys that weren't pulling their weight. There seemed to be some friction. That seems to be all gone, and they were able to do that in one off season. They're getting this brand of football, which is just physical. And we knew when Matt Rhule came in, it would be more physical, but the amount of time they've been able to turn some of these players around that were from the previous staff, add this physicality and have their mentality the way they do. This defense, they're talking about, they want to be the number 1 defense in the country next year. And I'm not saying they will be, but this defense is going to be such a stark contrast from what we saw last year in terms of just effort and understanding the game. When you understand the schemes more, you can play a lot loose and a lot more free. Again, it's instinctual and not thinking. And I think that's the biggest thing that we're going to notice from the defense year over year is that they're going to be playing more instinctually this year. And that's going to lead to a lot less mistakes.
And we'll also understand that, of course, while it seems a bit of a stretch, and as you just mentioned, yeah, it would be great if they fielded the number 1 statistical defense in the country, and the stats do reflect the level of play. But hey,
tough.
You could be the 3rd number 3 and really be the number 1. The stats are the stats, and they can be somewhat skewed.
Yeah.
But this is a defense that last year in total defense was number 11.
Mm-hmm.
They were 11 in total defense. They were in yards per play number 7 in the
Yep.
country in yards per play defense. And so
That's even with that Michigan game too.
they improved considerably. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see what their pass, not their raw numbers in terms of pass defense, but their efficiency rating, because that's more telling for
Yeah.
sure. They were 14th in the country in pass efficiency defense.
Yeah.
Under 60% completion percentage, only gave up 14 touchdown passes, had 9 picks. So real good numbers there.
Yeah. And the defensive back room, they have they're going to be doing a lot of movement this year. Of course, we have the Jack and Rover position, which kind of play all over the field as it is. But the difference in body types that you have at the cornerback spot, and this is why, like, I was a big fan of Bly Hill, kind of getting the second corner spot, is because he is 6'3", long and rangy. Some of these other guys are a little bit smaller. You have, Ethan Nation, who's 5'10". You have Mario Buford even getting rotated in there as a freshman, 5'11", and you got Hartzog, who's 5'9", Jeremiah Charles, 6 foot. Jeremiah Charles is the guy who won the dunk contest, and it's one of those things. It's like a couple of these guys are probably can rotate over to corner. I mean, Hartzog has been working safety. I mean, Hartzog was cross training safety last spring, and so I would not be surprised to see Hartzog be a safety. But I'm really liking Bly Hill to win this second cornerback spot. But the fact that they have, they listed, 5 names, and a couple of them being these young guys, Bly Hill just still needs to, get caught up on the schemes and the way that Nebraska plays. There's a different standard here. Like, he kind of mentioned that when he was talking about Stephon Thompson. And I mentioned that last week, that when Rhule was talking about Stephon Thompson, as he's a linebacker, but he said the transition wasn't as smooth as they wanted it to be. And, in my opinion, that's partially because they hold Stephon Thompson to a higher standard. He's already played with Tony White at Syracuse. They're talking about the standard at Syracuse is different, et cetera. Well, you have Bly Hill, who's coming in from an FCS school. And so he has to kind of learn the Division I style of football. But not only that, he's coming on to, like you said, a top 15 defense, top 10 potentially defense. And so it's all going to be a matter of if Bly Hill can just quickly learn the concepts. I think he's going to get that spot. But it'll be an interesting battle there because they're not really showing much of their hand on this. They listed about 5 guys for the cornerback 2 spot. They listed about 5 guys for the inside linebacker spot. And so a lot of these positions right now, and these guys that they're listing at these positions, they're all probably subject to move too, because again, it's about body types. If these guys are shorter, stockier, they can play safety. A lot of these safeties, they want to be able to move around and even drop down in the box a little bit. And just like the linebackers, they want to move the linebackers. They want to be able to move them down to the edge. And so when listening to them specify certain guys for certain positions, I would completely lock that into stone, because positionless offense, kind of a positionless defense with Tony White through 5. It's just a lot of movement. So, but I like Bly Hill to be that second corner. I have kind of since we got him, just because his rangy frame, his lanky frame, he's going to be able to, and he can move well, he can get up, so he knows how to use his frame. So I'm excited to see Bly Hill kind of get up there. And then moving over to the inside linebacker spot, he talked about Mikael Gebaer, Vincent Shavers, Javen Wright, Dylan Rogers, Stephon Thompson. I still think Stephon Thompson's probably going to be the guy, but I'm a huge fan of Javen Wright as well. Javen Wright, had really good flashes last year. He got better as the season went on. You know, he even played some nickel corner. He moved around a little bit. So I'm really excited for Javen Wright to potentially make that jump. Big guy, you know, he's tall guy, 6'5". And so Stephon Thompson, Javen Wright really interests me there. Vincent Shavers, you know, they're saying Vincent Shavers is kind of a difference maker right now. Dylan Rogers, who was, you know, red shirt, played on some special teams last year. Dylan Rogers, they were talking about how he's getting a lot stronger. So very, very good to have some options there at the inside linebacker. But again, some of these guys, you know, Stephon Thompson has the ability to move down to edge. You know, I'm not saying position move to edge, but they can use him in some concepts to where they can put him, you know, outside linebacker or move him down to the edge. So these guys that don't necessarily get in the inside linebacker spot, they're still going to, you know, see some playing time over the field, on the field. And I think that's the big focus this year is now that they have some depth and some of these freshmen got a lot of reps last year. Now they feel like they have the depth that they need to be able to kind of move these guys around a little bit more and not risk losing the depth. Last year, it was a little bit more spottier in terms of the the defense had the returning experience, and they'll have returning experience this coming year. But there's a lot of true freshmen, redshirt freshmen that are mentioned in these different things. So it's nice to have that depth so we can see how much they really want to move them around on defense and get, you know, see what we got with some of these young freshmen. You know, if we can get a guy like Buford in there his true freshman year, then that is very telling because we do need some of these guys to step up, these freshmen, because you know some of these guys on the defense, they're upperclassmen, and so there's going to be an exodus of players leaving on the defensive side. So this is going to be a real test to see what we have in this recruiting class that Matt Rhule has brought in, just to see what different things and how they can develop, because I know they're going to get a lot of playing time this season because staff has mentioned this time and time again. You only get better by playing football. You only get better by playing live reps. So the actual playing time on the field is very, very valuable to them. So in a way, it was a blessing in disguise with the amount of freshmen that had to play last year. And it's evident by the fact that they trust a lot of these freshmen. You could tell.
And again, Stephon Thompson at a full season, 13 games with Syracuse last year, 53 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks coming to Nebraska, but needing to step up in regards to his conditioning to be ready to go, according to Tony White and Matt Rhule's standards.
Yep.
Was there anything on that depth chart that either surprised you or you think was worthy of note?
So, I think the biggest thing was just kind of some of the names they mentioned that are kind of coming to the forefront, like, you know, a guy like Amari Buford getting reps at the cornerback 2 spot as a true freshman, and seeing some of these guys that, you know, like Jeremiah Charles, for instance, like he's a very, very athletic guy. He needs to refine some of his skill set, but even the fact that he was mentioned in there, that just shows, because again, you know, Matt Rhule is a big, big proponent of just athleticism and teaching the skill set. And he's a guy who's extremely athletic, who, if they can get him, you know, fine-tuned and really work some of his technique, he can be a big, big difference maker on defense. So I just think it was really hearing a lot of these young guys and some of these guys that they're mixing in there at these positions, and some of the guys who are standing out to them, because you know, with the defensive talent the way it is, and how good the defense was and the returning talent we got, the fact that these freshmen are making noise and sliding in the cornerback 2 spot is big time.
As Patriot No Job is telling us, hit the like button, everyone. It's easy to do. Please hit the like button before we finish tonight's show.
Mm-hmm.
While I search for my coaches' rankings, where did you have Matt Rhule?
I believe I had him. All right. So I had him at 6. Originally, I think I had him around. I think I had him at 6. It was either 5 or 6. I bumped him up a spot. But yeah, I think it was 5 or 6. I'd have to go back and verify. But just because he made the team better, yes, but we need to see the second year jump. And I think once we see that second year jump and we know that they're going to make the jump, because we can talk about it all day, but until we see it on the field, because we've been burned in the past, pretty much every offseason, we're offseason champions. And we're kind of to the point where it's like we want to see it on the field. And, if he can make the jump, if he can get 8, 9 wins, then he's going to climb up that just based on what we kind of talked about before, where it's like he made this team significantly better in a short amount of time. And that has to be taken into account.
So what you're seeing there, folks, these are just my notes. So there's a lot of scribble there. It may not make any sense to you. That's just to keep me on track and my talking points. So here are my coaches rankings for 2024, released a few weeks ago. If you want to check out the videos, they're over on the national channel. So this is a tough process because people can call in and criticize on one coach and say, why is he 18? He should be higher. Or why he's 32, he should be lower. And got to understand that most of these guys are really good at what they do. So you put a 40, and so I'm ranking all the Power 5 coaches. So there are 69, 68 in conferences, then Notre Dame. That makes 69 teams. So you can see a 40 next to a coach's name and think that me in particular doesn't think much of that coach. Well, that's not the case. And there's also, in my opinion, just a small margin between most of these spots. So as I see it, and then the other couple factors in here that make it difficult as well is, of course, the resources at these schools are so wildly different.
Yeah.
To compare what somebody can get accomplished at Ohio State versus at Northwestern in the same conference is night and day. Pardon the pun.
Yep.
So, and then my last point will be, I don't rank on legacy.
Yeah.
So let's say there aren't any great examples right now of this, but let's say Bobby Bowden and Joe Paterno were still around and they were in their last couple seasons. Well, all time, you would put them right near the top. If you were ranking their resume, their entire history, but I would be ranking them right now. How good are they right now? And they would be 30th, 40th, whatever, even though they're all-time greats.
Mm-hmm.
So if we weed through this and just look at the Big Ten coaches, I've got Ryan Day, number 6 in the country, number 1 in the Big Ten.
Yep, that's where I had him.
I've got what surprised a lot of people, Jonathan Smith, coming in from Oregon State at number 2 in the Big Ten. Then we've got Lincoln Riley at number 3 in the Big Ten. I've got him number 11 in the nation. I've got Dan Lanning just one spot behind.
I had him at 2 in the
You
Big
got
Ten.
Lanning at 2
in the Big Ten.
So the other portion of that is, while I say that it's a in the moment ranking,
Yeah,
and the past doesn't count, of course the past weighs into your, if
a little bit. Yeah.
A coach doesn't get dumb all of a sudden.
Yeah.
He just because he has a bad season, you don't just say, okay, he was the number 4 ranked coach in the country a year ago, and I'm dropping him to 50 because he had one bad season. So
Right.
all of it's nuanced.
Yep.
So I've got Lanning at 4. I've got Luke Fickell at 5.
And I think I had Matt Rhule. I think I had Luke Fickell at 5, and I think I had Matt Rhule one spot behind Fickell.
Okay. So I've got James Franklin at 6.
James Franklin was 3. Yeah.
Then I've got Kirk Ferentz at 7, number 23 in the country. There's PJ at 8, number 25 in the country. Then I've got Matt Rhule at 28. I had him 23. That's what that means in parentheses last year,
Oh,
down
so you
from
moved down.
23 to 28.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah, because the end of the season there, coming into the season, but like you said, it's very nuanced, and some coaches probably outperformed expectations that were behind him.
Exactly. That's the other thing to take into consideration. It's not like you're just saying, "Oh, I'm evaluating Matt Rule and him only,
Yeah.
and he did a bad job, and I'm dropping him 5 spots." No, there could be all sorts of other things going on with other coaches who ascended past him just
Michigan State.
temporarily for one season, or we'll see what happens in the future. But it's these guys aren't ranked in a silo.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I in no way did I believe that Matt Rule did a poor job
Yeah.
last year, but the Jeff Sims
Well, 28 is
selection,
that's no slouch of a ranking either.
not at all. Out
Yeah,
of 69, and again, I think almost all these guys are really good at what they do.
absolutely.
Sharon Moore was difficult, of course,
Yeah.
because he's only coached 3 games, but hell, he beat
He won.
Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State, and but he didn't coach during the week.
Yeah.
But then the other thing is, he was one of the best offensive line coaches in the country, then became one of the best offensive coordinators in the country. And also consider that when Harbaugh was suspended the first 3 weeks of the season, and they did kind of a round robin of the 3 assistants, and the other 2 are excellent. They've moved on to the NFL, so they're really good at what they do. Sharon Moore obviously showed enough during his audition in September for him to be the undisputed guy to get the selection when the whole season was on the line.
Yeah, and like you said, they had some talented assistants to the point where it's like, you know, some of the assistants when they lost unexpectedly, an assistant or two, like it was a big deal, and that just shows you the caliber of coach that Sharon Moore is, because he beat out those guys. Like you said, a couple of them went to the NFL, and so yeah, I mean, he's a very very good coach. But yeah, it's one of those wait and see things. He did get the wins, but I think you do have to put him a little bit up there. Part of when I was doing my rankings, I think I put a little bit too much stock into the team that they currently have. For instance, I or the fact that they don't have the experience of being a head coach. So I did drop Sharon Moore a little bit, but I think I went a little bit too far into the fact that they lost talent and what I'm expecting of this upcoming season as opposed to just the coaches themselves.
And
So I think that's
absolutely,
where you're
folks.
right, and I kind of need to adjust.
Well, I'm also reminding people I don't pretend to have the perfect formula. These
Yeah,
are
yeah,
not perfect rankings. I think they're good. I think
yeah.
they come with some knowledge and perspective, but I in no way, just like my team rankings,
Yep.
would I
Makes
ever
sense.
say that these are the perfect rankings, that they can't be argued. Of course, they can be argued. So I kind of lost track of where we were in the Big Ten. I think Sharon Moore 9.
Yeah, I believe so.
Then we got Jed Fish at Washington, comes in from Arizona, did a heck of a job. The disaster and dumpster fire that he took over at Arizona, my
Yeah,
goodness, they were
yeah,
awful. And flipped the roster, did a great job. And so we'll see from there. But it is just one big season at Arizona. So
yep.
I'm also cautious about the guys that have did it
1 year.
once. Sonny Dykes did it once, and
Yep.
then they drop back to 5 wins. So Jed Fish must be at 10. And then and I'm still in the place where I think these guys are really good coaches. Like
Yeah.
Brett Bielema, I still think is a really good coach, but 10th in the Big Ten doesn't sound impressive, but got him at 35 overall.
I'm moving Bill O'Brien to last just because I'm a Texans fan. So he's the last for me.
Well, I don't know what to tell you there. Was he
Bill
that
O'Brien.
bad with the
Oh my,
Texans?
he ruined us. They doubled him up as a GM and he ruined us.
Well, I'm not ranking him. I wouldn't rank
I
him
know
as
that's
a
just
head
my
coach
personal
based
bias.
on what he did as a GM.
That's just my personal bias because I couldn't stand him when he was with the Texans. So I admit that's 100% bias and not
Okay.
realistic, but I'm salty.
Here is a perfect example of what we were talking about just a second ago. You would think that since you had Shiano, what, fifth?
I think I had him 5th. Yeah, actually, I had Kirk Ferentz 4th, him 5th.
Okay. Shiano fifth, and I guess I've got him 11th, I think is
Mhm.
where we are. Like that sounds like it's wildly different and we disagree. Not really. Like I think shoot between 2 or 3 and 12, I think we could go.
Yeah,
I just yeah, I don't see a great separation between Luke Fickle and Greg Schiano, for
yeah.
example.
And the
So
hardest part is that there's so many new coaches and there was so much
yeah.
turnover.
So here's the biggest wild card of them all, in a sense. So this may sound ridiculous, but I think you'll understand based on what I said at the beginning of what my criteria is based on what they're doing right now. You could say David Braun's the best coach in the country
Yeah, yeah, true. Yep.
just based on what he did. Now,
It's crazy what he did.
none of us really think he's the best coach in the country, but he took a team that everyone thought was going to win one game and he went 8-5 and won a bowl game. What he did was incredible.
Yeah, it was.
So that was a difficult ranking.
Yeah,
I wanted to give him a ton of credit for that, but of course, I'm not going to say, oh, he's one of the 10 best coaches in the country based on one season.
could have been a flash in the pan
Yeah.
type of deal.
Now, if they go like 8-4 this year,
Again? Oh, yeah, he's moving up. He's
then
moving up.
wow. So that must be 12. Then I've got Mike Loxley at 13. Um, I he's done a nice job at Maryland.
Yeah, some inconsistencies though, but
Then we've got
oh, Dion. Oof.
who's next here? Must be where are we? Our next
Kurt
coach
Cignetti.
is Kurt Cignetti. So it's his first year in the big time, but he did a heck of a job at James Madison.
So I'm guessing you probably have Ryan Walters last as well.
We'll have to wait and see. I don't. Yeah, I believe I do.
Yeah.
Where are we? 13?
Yeah.
I've lost track
13.
here. Then I've got who's our next Big Ten coach? Ryan Walters.
John Foster. Oh, so Ryan Walter. Okay, I see at 63. Okay.
Who have I missed here? Anyway, we
Deshaun Foster.
well, there's Deshaun Foster.
Oh, that's right. I had Deshaun
68.
Foster last, and I had Ryan Walters one spot above him
Okay. Yep. That's where I'm at on that.
because that was a terrible hire in my opinion.
Ryan Walters.
Deshaun Foster.
Deshaun Foster.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just would think that UCLA could do better.
Especially when they were floating out names like Tony White and stuff like that. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Deshaun Foster really.
You're
kind of,
moving to the Big Ten. You've basically been thrown a life preserver, and
Yeah.
you could almost thank USC for bringing you along. And you're getting a full, like, think Oregon and Washington are getting half shares.
Yep.
And UCLA is getting a full share. And I have completely lost track of time.